Guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk again about here to talk about the Gorilla Glue girl, this individual from Louisiana who apparently put Gorilla Glue in her hair. Now is back in the news again because she hairsprayed it, and the hairspray that she put in was toxic and is now making, or the hair dye that she put in is toxic and now making her hair fall out. First of all, the hair didn't heal. The hair didn't completely heal in the first place. So when she had the surgery, but now she does this with the hair dye and the hair completely falls out. It seems like with her, judging from her picture, there is a lot of self hate going on. Because one thing I didn't notice initially was that not only does she had this kind of hair problem, bad hair day or whatever, she also has eye contacts in her eye, light eye contact. So it may be an issue with her, this individual Tessa Brown, that she doesn't like her race, that she is a self hater, that she is wanting to be a different race. And this goes into a lot of historical critique of self hatred that predominates among a lot of folks that stems from slavery. Because during the time of slavery, the slave masters made the slave, particularly the female slave, but even the male slaves, to feel inferior. And one of the ways that they would do this is through hair. They came up with terminologies like bad hair, which was hair that was more on the African side, hair that was more coiled or more rough was considered bad, and hair that was closer to Europeans was considered good. They did this in the Caribbean as well as they're doing it. They did it in North America, in United States, because again, well, what a society prizes above another society. So if you live in a society that prizes academics a lot, the smartest individual will be praised. If you live in like in Athens, Greece, that society put academics, learning, philosophy above war and above physicality. So people like Aristotle, people like Plato, people like that were prized above the warriors. But in Sparta, it was the exact opposite. In Sparta, the people that were warlike, the warriors, were prized above the scholars. So during slavery, of course, African Americans being put as slaves, being forcibly interjected into European society, were made to feel inferior because of their hair, but also their skin tone. Of course, we know about their skin tone. That's where the terminology of black and white comes from because of the skin tone. But the hair is not one that a lot of people know about. It is something that is known in the African American community, but it's not, and in some segments of the Hispanic American community, like the Caribbean Hispanic community, knows about it as well. But the broader general society, Chris Rock released a movie in the early 2000s about it, doesn't really know that this is an issue, doesn't really know that women and men at one time, put chemicals into their hair to make it look on the whiter side, straightened it, permed it, put chemicals in it to make it look that. Even men in the Malcolm X movie, we saw it. The doo-wop singers in the 30s and 40s did it. The saying was fried, dyed, and laid to the side. But men, after the Black Power movement and after the Civil Rights movement, men stopped doing it. Women stopped doing it for a period of time as well. You had the Afro era. Angela Davis and the Panthers and all had afros. That's one of the biggest dramatic changes you see from the 40s and 50s to the 60s and 70s was the afros. In the 40s and 50s, you saw like people would try to imitate the whites and have chemically processed hair, men as well as women. By the 70s, by the 60s and 70s, because of the political environment and because of the political climate going on at the time, African Americans weren't doing that anymore, women nor men. And they saw the Panthers with big afros, right? And that really, not for nothing, that really scared the shit out of the white establishment. That was one of the things. The hair thing was a political statement. You know, it was a way to assert your identity and yourself. Going Harkening back to an earlier time, particularly the times of ancient Egypt and Nubia, which predates ancient Egypt. We focus a lot on Egypt because Egypt influenced the Greeks, which influenced the Romans, which gave birth to Western civilization. But Nubia was there before Egypt was there. And in Nubian society, they had braids, they had twists, they had bantu knots, and everything. So, seeing this in the 60s and 70s, the white people seeing this, it was like, damn, they're finally waking up. They're finally waking up to consciousness, and they're not being allowed having allowed themselves to being controlled by us anymore, controlled or manipulated or made to feel inferior. But what happened in the 1980s? Go back to the 80s video, the first one, not the one I did this morning, but the first one. I said that everything that happened in the 80s was a turnaround for the progress made in the 60s and 70s, right? Everything that we accomplished as a society, mainstream society, acceptance of different hairstyles, acceptance of different ways of life and ways of thinking, acceptance of the afro. Michael Jackson and his brothers coming out in 1968 with the afro in mainstream society and pop culture, the biggest pop band in the world, coming out. Everything was reversed by then. By the 80s, like Lisa is saying, women that had particular hairstyles, particular hairstyles, dreads and afros and Afrocentric hairstyles were being fired from in the corporate world because everything became more corporatized in the 80s. And it exists like that to this day. But that's where it started. So people are saying, well, just go with natural hair, right? But they really can't because if they do, they won't get a job corporate. They won't get moved up the ladder corporately, or they may even be fired. So they risk themselves financially to do so. With this particular woman, in this particular woman's case, I think it's completely something different, and it's not a thing where she wants to fit in the corporate world, or she wants to she she wants to fit in society. I think it's a thing more so that she wants to be somebody else. With her, I think it's a personal thing. But with a lot of women, it's not a personal thing. It's more of a financial decision, just like with names. Certain names that are more quote unquote black, when the black names are less likely to receive a job than whiter sounding names. So for example, if I'm a man and my name is Tashawn, I'm less likely to receive a job than if I'm a man and my name is Greg, or if I'm a woman and my name is uh, Shamika, I'm less likely to receive that position than if I'm a woman and my name is Lisa. You know what I mean? So there is that level of prejudice that came about in the 1980s with the rise of corporatism, where white people are like, well, we're never going to allow this. We're never going to allow the natural hair movement and the Afro movement. Yeah, okay, I didn't know that, Lisa. Where the Lisa saying in 2009, several states and cities proposed laws banning policies that generalize people of color for wearing natural hair, curls, dreadlocks, and other styles. And that could be because of the natural hair movement that started right here online. But one thing that I wanted to criticize the natural hair movement about, and before I was interrupted in my other video, I did exactly that, was that I was doing exactly that. I feel that a lot of the natural hair movement is sisters, people that, women, people that are not, I mean, they are black, you know what I mean? Because black is a broad term, but they don't have 4C natural hair. They are mostly the people that are in the natural hair movement that started the natural hair movement. I don't know about in it now because me as a man, I'm not in that space. Lisa would know more about it than me. But I used to see when the natural hair movement started was a lot of mixed girls, a lot of girls that were half Hispanic, a lot of girls that were half white, and yeah, they would have quote unquote natural hair, but they would have hair kind of like I have, loosely curled hair. They would not have the traditional Afro 4C type hair. You know what I mean? It's just like with when the Hotep movement or the consciousness movement first started, and I'm sure even now I'm not in conscious circles anymore. I completely divulge myself out of Hotepism and all that because to me it's all propaganda and it's all a lot of it is pseudoscience and a lot of it is just all they focus on is Egypt and they don't focus on any other African civilization. I used to see from them and the natural hair movement was a part of this. What I used to see from them was they would take a woman that was racially ambiguous, and she would have natural hair, right? And then she would become the paradigm. She would become the representation of Afrocentric beauty, and they would completely disregard a darker skinned, more melanated woman that the movement was supposed to elevate. You know, so in a way they were hypocritical, just as they would do with the focuses that they would have on civilization, the focuses they would have on their history, right? They would focus on the hidden history of ancient Egypt, right? What they call ancient Kemet, completely disregard the history of West African civilization, which most of their Yeah, most of their ancestors came from those civilizations, but they would completely disregard that for lighter skinned civilizations or civilizations that were more known and more familiar to whites, like ancient Egypt or like the Moors, right? But what about the black civilizations? So they would do the same thing with the natural hair movement. They would elevate, they would love to elevate biracial or racially ambiguous women and put them as the face of the natural hair movement, still subconsciously feeding into the system of colorism and the system of white supremacy, not even knowing it. Because they would elevate not 4C hair, but they would elevate loosely curled, racially ambiguous mixed hair and call that natural beauty. Oh yeah, she's natural. She's natural. And what I know that this is to be true because when I was heavily invested into the what this derogatorily called the Hotep Movement or the Pro-African Consciousness Movement or the Conscious Movement. And this was around 14, 15, 2014, 2015, 2013, to later 2012, when I was involved with them. And yeah, they did. But they shouldn't become the face of it, Lisa. Okay, what I wanted to say too was when I was involved heavily with them, even though I'm not a woman, I saw a lot of those spaces because I was dating somebody at the time that was mixed, that was racially ambiguous, and had that kind of still a natural hair look, still a black woman look, but lighter skin, racially ambiguous at the time. And we were involved with a lot of these groups, not only because of that, but also because she was dealing with sickle cell anemia, which is a disease that strikes mostly African people, Afro descended with people and women. So we would see a lot of these spaces and frequent a lot of these spaces in person as well as on Facebook when the natural hair movement in the new millennium first started. And I started to really notice that. I'm like, wait a minute, it's supposed to be a pro black movement, it's supposed to be for all quote unquote black people, right? But you saw a lot of racially ambiguous women, a lot of mixed women, like the sister I was seeing at the time, being propped up as the face of it, and you saw it with a lot of the men too. People such as myself, people that were racially ambiguous or mixed on the lighter skin side, it's good that they're embracing their identity. So don't get me wrong, they should embrace their identity. But should they be put on as the face of it? No, they shouldn't, because that defeats the purpose of it. That just reinvents white supremacy in another way. You know what I mean? Because now you have the racially ambiguous people. Lisa was saying she stopped putting permanent hair when she was in her 20s. Yeah, I think around the time you started doing it, Lisa, it really wasn't a thing at that time. In the early 2000s, it didn't start becoming, at least what I remember, it didn't start really becoming a thing until like 15, 14, 13, around there, and it was started with the racially ambiguous women that didn't have 4C texture hair, right? I don't know about now, you know what I mean? Because I'm not plugged into that. You know what I mean? I don't know what it looks like now, but I do know that a lot of people are like, wait a minute, you can't, uh, you can't be a racially ambiguous or a mixed or a biracial woman shouldn't be the face of the natural hair movement that is the natural hair movement that supposed to represent people with 4C type hair, women with 4C type hair. How can that be? That's like having a trans woman be the face of feminism. You're jacking my shit, bro. This shit is not for you. This is for you. This is for everybody. But to make you the face of it is an insult to me because your struggle is not my struggle. You understand? So it's like with 6ix9ine being the face of the nine trade. How? When he's not even in the gangster world. He's not even in that world. How does he become the face of it? How does he become the conduit to um the experience? He doesn't experience the struggle. He's not in that struggle. You know, it's just like um in the disabled community. If somebody in the disabled community comes along with like a mental disease, a mental disorder, ADHD, or some other kind of disability that is not visible, Yes, they're disabled too. I'm disabled. We all disabled, right? We all under that label. But when I go through what I go through as a person in a wheelchair and has semi severe cerebral palsy is something totally different than what somebody with ADHD goes through whose disability is not visible. We're not in the same struggle, bro. You're disabled and I'm disabled, but my struggle is harder. You understand? I face more barriers in society. So a light skinned woman that's racially ambiguous claiming the mantle of the natural hair movement is some bullshit compared to her sister who has fortune hair and who's dark skinned and who goes through that. They don't want to hear that because that seems like, oh, you're not including everybody. But that is what it is. You know what I'm saying? The hair discrimination wasn't made to discriminate against biracial or racially ambiguous women that don't have 4C hair, that have loosely curled hair. It was made to discriminate against women that were fully black and they had 4C hair. You know what I mean? And it's not a thing to say, okay, yeah, we're separating. Oh, you're being separate to, you're separating. You're being discriminatory. No, they want to claim that when they don't have the upper hand in the upper hand position. You know what I mean? It's just like with the Black Lives Matter thing. When white people want to say, well, okay, you're not including everybody, right? All lives matter. Oh, yes, all lives matter, but we're talking about this now. We're not talking about that now. You know what I mean? We all have our struggles, but your struggle's a little bit different. Now, to go into what Lisa is saying about it's trending to go natural in regards to the killings of black men. Yeah, it goes hand in hand with the Black Lives Matter movement. But again, that that is like a go around. That's just like what was happening in the 60s, 70s. The politics came first and the fashion came later. Here the fashion came first and the politics came later, right? They weren't doing the fashion first. No, it's the same thing. The politics came first and the fashion came later. The politics was and the fashion is a response to the politics. And this woman, this Gorilla Glue girl, she's not with the program. She's stuck back in the early 2000s when people were doing that. People wasn't doing no Gorilla Glue shit. You know, like that's to the other direction. But they were still doing the perms and all that. And I think she was starting to do it because she, stuff was probably closed. She's from Louisiana, so she's in the South, so stuff was probably closed. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I always say that. You know what I mean? What occurs is because something else occurred before that. Law of cause and effect. So, but she not with the club. She not with the program, and she ended up looking like a bozo. You know what I mean? Because of doing this. But her behavior as a particular individual, yeah, she had to go GoFundMe. I guess because people felt sorry for her because she's more concerned with what's on her hair than in her hair. You know what I mean? Or they probably felt that she was special needs. You know what I mean? Because they were like, oh, well, who's going to do some shit like that unless the individual with special needs, right? And people gave money the first time. You're right, Lisa. But think of this. What if it's a hustle? What if she continuously, okay, you did it first time, people felt sorry for you, they gave you mad bread, and then now you want to do it to something else again because you want to feel like, oh, well, it worked one time, let me try it again. No, don't go to the well too many times, ma, because that well is already exhausted. We've been there, done that. As Fat Joe would say, today's price, yesterday's price is not today's price. In other words, what worked yesterday is not going to work tomorrow, you know, today. We're on some different wavelengths. We're more educated. We moved on. We're not focusing on you no more. And I think the money stuff is the way, people come online with some kind of struggle, you know what I mean, some kind of um, problem or whatever, and they feel like they can get people to donate to them. It's the new age version of people begging on the street. But we're not going to beg for you. We're not going to collect for you because you've already made your stupid mistake. That can only work once. How she got mad bread the first time, I don't even know. I don't even know what kind of person would sympathize with a struggle like that. Apparently, a lot of women have put Gorilla Glue in their hair before. You know what I mean? Oh, I didn't even know about the song. Yeah, the song, that's some crazy shit. Nikki not gonna put her brand on that. Bad enough. Nikki is already branded because she's married to a pedophile or whatever. She not gonna put her brand on somebody dumb like that. Maybe maybe she can get Iggy Azalea to do it. Iggy Azalea seemed like she could use the support. You know, didn't she fall off in 20? Didn't didn't she fall off in 20 whatever 14 when she made the fancy? So maybe Iggy will jump on it. People say, well, Iggy ain't black. Well, Iggy wanted to be black and this girl wanted to be white. So there you go. They met each other halfway, middle of the road, right? You know, but this is a dumbass person. This is a person that needs to be educated. And this is a person who put glue into her hair. Something Gorilla Glue is for furniture fixtures. Why would you put that in your hair as gel? You know, oh yeah, Rachel Dolezal. Maybe Rachel Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal. Um, uh, could be on a song with her. Shit, remember Sean Price? Yo, I think it went back to 2014. Sean Price, the white guy who tried to say that he was mixed, he had a haircut like T.I. and everything. He tried to hijack the whole Black Lives Matter movement. This is what I'm talking about. This is what, look his name up, Lisa. A guy that he was completely white. He, he was like a male version of Rachel Dolezal. He was completely white. And he tried to hijack the Black Lives Matter movement. His name is Sean Price. I mean, Sean, excuse me, not Sean Price. Excuse me. Disregard that. Sean King. Sean King. Yeah. Sean Price is a rapper. May he rest in peace from Brooklyn. Sean King. Um, this is what I'm talking about. This is what Sergeant Willie Pete always talks about when he talks about in his videos. Sergeant Willie Pete, the YouTuber, he makes very insightful YouTube videos. SWP, look him up on YouTube. He doesn't show his face, but he's obviously your brother, right? And he always makes videos, very insightful videos about social movements here on YouTube. And what he always talks about is reorganizing the race. How biracials, although not accepted in their own community, will look to identify with their quote unquote black side because they know that because of the history of white supremacy, the 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 black side will elevate their mediocrity, and the white side or the Hispanic side or the Asian side They'll just be another Hispanic person or another white person or well another Asian or whatever, and they'll get lost in the heap. But because of the inferiority complex that comes along with white supremacy, the black side of the black movement will elevate them to be the face of it. So what he proposes is like, yeah, they could be here, but they can never be the face of it. They cannot be the face of the movement. They cannot take it over. This is a if the natural hair movement is a black movement, the BLM is a black movement or was a black movement. The African consciousness movement is a black movement, and everybody can participate in it, and everybody can give their opinions of it. But can they be the face of it? No, they shouldn't be. How does, and this is another example, how does Takashi 69 become the face of a movement that was initially started as a way to unify a certain race of people? How does that happen? Right, exactly, claiming of their own. How does that happen? How does suddenly 6ix9ine, who is not a gangster, who is not, he's not black, right? All of a sudden, because somebody wants to put him on, he wants to be a rapper, he becomes the face of it. Other movements let anybody in. Asian people let anybody practice martial arts, but Asian people is not going to elevate a black person or a Hispanic into the highest levels of martial arts. Hell no. You know, they let Barack Obama be the president of the United States, and I'm gonna say they let, because yeah, I know people vote and everything, but it goes down to the electoral college, right? It goes down to the electoral college still, so there's kind of like they selected it. They let him be the president, but they didn't let him be the the face of the United States. They didn't put his face on the money. George Washington is still the face of the United States. Abraham Lincoln is still the face of the United States. People will let other races will do reggaeton, right? But they're not going to let an African American become the face of reggaeton, are they? You know what I mean? That you could become other races that are not Middle Eastern could become Muslim, right? But they're not gonna let, and I know they ain't gonna let. I've experienced this in the mosque. They ain't gonna let a convert or somebody that came not from a Middle Eastern background that doesn't know Arabic be the face of Islam. You know, you stay where you're at and you assume the role that you was meant to assume. You're within the movement. You're not the movement. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you, Lisa, for like Elvis, basically. Elvis was another example. He starts doing rock and roll. All of a sudden, he's the face of rock and roll. He's the king of rock and roll. Peace. Don't forget to like and oh, the stem cell thing. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. I completely forgot about that. Getting caught up in it. She has to get stem cell resurgery. Now, I feel like this is unfair because, again, coming from a person that has a disability, I feel like people with disabilities should be first in line to get a stem cell surgery, not some dumbass who did some stupid shit to her hair. That's a whole nother political issue because I remember in the 2000s when the Republican Party was banning people from getting stem cell um, surgery. So that's a whole nother issue, but that's something I'm gonna make a separate video on this. But thank you for subscribing. Don't forget to thank you for commenting. Thank you for contributing, Lisa. I love you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.